Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to White Sox Daily. I'm Aaron Feely once again. As baseball week continues to roll on, we are now just 2 days away from the start of spring training for the Chicago White Sox as they will face the Cubs on Friday. World Baseball Classic is back this year. There's just a great deal to be excited about this coming spring. We'll jump right on into it here. As one of the options perennially being talked about all offseason long for the White Sox to potentially bring back, especially when outfield was still such a major need for a majority of the White Sox offseason. Mike Tauchman no longer going to be available for the Chicago White Sox. He was a guy that was talked about a great deal because of what he was able to do last season for Chicago. Came in, actually put together one of his better career seasons at 33 years old. He was going to be 34 coming into this year. Hit 263 last season, was among the team leaders in home runs. We obviously weren't a team that had a great deal of power hitters in the lineup, but he was among them. A guy that hit number one in the lineup a number of times throughout the season. He was a guy that really stepped up for the White Sox in a season where they desperately needed as much help as they could possibly get in as many areas as they could possibly get it. And he showed up for the team, became kind of a beloved veteran amongst White Sox fans for the fact that he came in, performed way above expectations, and then, was one of the better offensive players on the really weak Chicago White Sox roster, especially at the beginning half of the season before they had some of those call-ups come in and provide a decent chunk more spark and more excitement for the team going forward, like Colson Montgomery, like Kyle Teel, guys like that. Tauchman will be joining Luis Robert in New York as he is signed with the New York Mets. And an interesting tidbit of this is that it's actually a strictly minor league deal for Tauchman with a spring training invite attached. Considering what he was able to put together last season with the White Sox, considering how beloved he was among White Sox fans, a bit surprising to see him. Obviously we're pretty late into the deal now, but it still is a little bit surprising to see him sign for what is essentially strictly a minor league contract with the New York Mets. Now, they have a very deep outfield pool to pick from. Luis Roberts, obviously, there now. They've got Juan Soto as well. They have got a really, really solid outfield room, as well as, Carson Benj is there. Tyrone Taylor, MJ Melendez is there. They've got a lot of players to try to squeeze into that outfield group. So, whatever. It is what it is. But yes, certainly something that raised a couple of eyebrows, something to keep an eye on here is Mike Tauchman signs with the New York Mets, a strictly minor league deal as it stands right now. So, maybe the rest of the league doesn't see Mike Tauchman quite the same way White Sox fans viewed him last season. He is 34. Coming off of a one of his better seasons, and that was still just a 263 year with, fewer than 20 home runs. Not necessarily, shocking that he's not blowing a bunch of teams across Major League Baseball away with those numbers, but still a little bit shocking that it was for just a purely minor league deal. White Sox fans, myself included, certainly thought higher of him than that. As far as what he was able to contribute to the White Sox last season. We'll move it right on along here and go right into Chris Getz's interesting comments in regards to the catcher situation coming into this year, where they asked him about the Corey Lee, Edgar Caro, Kyle Teel scenario. How do they feel about the catcher situation? Who's the odd man out? How do they feel about who's the starter? Blah, 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 blah. And his comment was essentially that he feels really good about how Kyle Teel is looking like an everyday guy. We do view Teel as an everyday guy, but at the catching position, we know that doesn't mean you're actually in there every day. It's a demanding role, and Edgar is a guy that we like to bat against lefties, so there's DH opportunities for him there, and of course, he'll be able to catch here and there as well. Certainly seems like to Chris Getz, the general manager of the Chicago White Sox, this is very cut and dry. Kyle Teal's the starter, Edgar Caro backs him up. The end. It's set in stone. That appears to be the mentality that they've got going into this season, going into spring training. A lot of White Sox fans have been speculating about this is still an open competition. This is Corey Lee still trying to wiggle his way in there. This is Kyle Teal versus Edgar Caro, who's going to take command of it. And, Kyle Teal was seen as the front runner, but not necessarily, done deal or anything like that. Chris Getz's comments yesterday seem to indicate the opposite of that. As far as the White Sox are concerned, this is not an open competition. This is Kyle Teal's job, and that Edgar Caro is there to be the primary backup and basically play when he can. He's not there to compete, to take Kyle Teal's reps, to take Kyle Teal's playing time in games. He's there to play when he is needed to play, and that Kyle Teal is the everyday starter at the catcher position. And he didn't even mention Corey Lee at all. So that is an interesting takeaway to this point. That is certainly something that raised a couple of eyebrows as well. So bang, bang, back to back, a couple of mild surprises amongst White Sox fans and, amidst all this White Sox news from our first two stories of the day. Let us know how you feel about that in the comment section below. Are you at all surprised that Kyle Teal has been kind of given the nod so early on without it even being remotely a competition? Were you expecting there to be even slight competition? Were you expecting Corey Lee to be more heavily factored into this equation as opposed to not mentioned at all by Chris Getz in the press conference when he talked about the catching situation where everyone falls in line? Let us know in the comment section below, and we're going to continue to keep it moving here. And we're going to continue to keep it moving by mentioning some of the players to watch this coming spring. And another one that we'll have you let us know in the comment section below, who are kind of the top names that you are looking forward to this season, not just in regards to some of the big competitions and stuff like that. Obviously, one of the big things that everyone's going to be looking at is the center fielders. Acuna is going to be competing. Pereira is going to be competing. A lot of these guys are going to come in here. Kelenic as well, and see who's going to take over that center fielder job. But I'm not sure there's a great deal of many people that are totally excited to watch the center fielders play. It's kind of a hodgepodge of mid for the Chicago White Sox right now. Are you super excited to watch Murakami's first at-bats against actual major league pitching? Is that something that you think is your top priority as far as what you're going to be watching this spring training? Is it going to be where Lenyn Sosa fits in and watching him compete against guys like Chase Mydroth, Colston Montgomery, Miguel Vargas in the infield? Let us know in the comment section below. Who are the top names for you guys specifically to watch? Some of your favorites and some of the stiffest competition for this year's spring training, and let's sound off in the comments. We can't wait to hear all about it. And we'll cap things off here with a bit of news from around the division and how that will affect the Chicago White Sox. We've got pitching news from a pair of American League Central teams. Earlier last week, Justin Verlander finally signed. That was a huge name that was still out there amongst free agency in the starting pitching world. He ends up going back to the Detroit Tigers. So the Tigers will not stop getting better. They refuse to do it. It's starting to get borderline irritating for those of us that are, not just Chicago White Sox fans, but Twins fans, Guardians fans, Royals fans, the whole lot of us. Please make Detroit stop continuing to go out and sign top-end free agent starting pitching to their roster. We're getting kind of sick and tired of it. The Tigers look to be one of the better pitching teams in Major League Baseball this coming season, and Verlander, of course, he's getting up there in age. He's over 40 at this point, but he had another solid season last year. He continues to be a bit of an ageless wonder, and the Detroit Tigers looking scary there. A team that got slightly less scary, though, in an unfortunate manner as far as their starting pitching is the Minnesota Twins, who lost Pablo Lopez, presumably for the entire season with a torn UCL. He's going to get a second opinion on that, but it's not looking good for the borderline ace for the Minnesota Twins, a guy that has had a couple of really nice seasons for them back to back. And yeah, so it's just an unfortunate circumstance for Minnesota, as Pablo Lopez likely done for the year with the torn UCL. He will go in for a second opinion, though, in regards to that. That'll do it for today's news, though, regarding the Chicago White Sox. I've been Aaron Feely, and this has been White Sox Daily.